You all ready?
Okay. Today is July 20th, 2023. I am calling to order the local planning agency for the village of Tequesta. And could you please do a roll call?
Janet Strand, Steve Egan, Elizabeth Schauer,
Here?
Leslie Dasher,
Here.
Teresa Maggio,
Here.
Sherry Ambrose,
Here.
Jean McEldowney,
Here.
and Marie Sapir.
Okay, with that, may I have a motion to approve the agenda with any additions or corrections?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved. Okay, item number 1 is approval of the minutes. Approval of the previous meeting minutes from June 15th, 2023. And I know that Marie wants to make a comment.
Sure. The one change that I think should be made is and I apologize, I don't have the number, but it's under the Sea Turtle Protection Ordinance.
Marie, could you speak just a little louder?
Sure. Under the Sea Turtle Protection Ordinance, I think it's on page 2. It's the second page of that. At the end of my the second sentence of my comments should be amended to say, she believed that the ordinance required additional consideration and voiced her concerns about various provisions in the proposal.
Okay. May I then have a motion to approve the minutes with the correction
As amended.
as amended by Marie?
Make a motion to approve previous meeting minutes with the amended comments.
Okay, may I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. Okay, item number 2 is ordinance number 10-23, an ordinance of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Village Code of Ordinances at Chapter 14. Buildings and Building Regulations, Article 1 in general, by creating an entirely new section, 14-7, vacant lot maintenance to provide minimum standards, including erosion control and sodding for vacant lots throughout the village, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 14, buildings and building regulations shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, a severability clause, and authority to codify, providing an effective date, and for other purposes. Lance, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the application or the ordinance that you have in front of you was heard at the February 27th Village Council workshop. The intent behind this ordinance is more so because there are certain, I guess, properties that are, when they lie vacant, the village is trying to figure out how to, I guess, regulate or set standards for the maintenance of said properties. So this ordinance came to be. Essentially what it says is that the person that owns said property needs to take care of the property, such as they can't have dry vegetation, weeds, grass, invasive species, things of that nature. They can't leave motor vehicles or boats parked on there or anything abandoned on the property. They can't leave broken equipment or discarded furniture, things that essentially would be considered like a nuisance. And then also there's a provision on page 3, letter C, that says an event an existing building or structure is demolished, resulting in the creation of a vacant property. Essentially, they have to sod said property and also irrigate said property, and they have a certain time frame to do such events. And then, if you have your examples that were also included, there are other municipalities that have similar type of regulations, and that is the gist of the ordinance.
I have a question. How many vacant lots do we have in the village of Tequesta?
I know for sure that we have one on Tequesta Drive, which is across the street.
Yeah.
We have the Rude property, which was approved as Key Estates.
That's on County Line Road.
County Line Road. And I cannot think of any more as of right now. But those are the two that really come to mind off the top of my head.
Okay. Okay. Are there any questions from the board members?
I did have one question where it says they have to plant something within the 90 days, plant ground cover within the 90 days. I'm just curious if construction is prepared to begin quickly, you'll never have grass with the trucks driving over it and people stomping on it. I'm just curious, is there a time frame between when construction is due to start? I'm, like down Riverside Drive.
Yeah.
There's the 3 homes in Jupiter. There were 3 homes demolished all at once. I think right where Seabrook
Yeah.
Right.
comes into it. One started construction almost immediately. The other 2 sit there. So I'm just curious, since this property here, which I'm talking about Jupiter, they started almost immediately. You couldn't plant grass there because there's trucks and. So I'm just curious, is there some time frame between when it's demolished and when if somebody has an active permit, are they required to do this, or is that something that we can add?
That might be, so this is, as you know, this is a recommendation body,
Yes.
so if you think that there should be something that should be modified onto this and added, then that might be something that you can add to the ordinance.
Okay.
I know historically, and this is more of a building question, but I know historically, once they do a demolition permit, usually they have some type of permit that's following suit. So I know that it kind of transpires in a way that they'll start building soon. But
Yeah.
As far as if you want to include that, we
Yeah,
can include
If
that.
there's no intent, nothing.
Yeah, that's
Ready to
sitting there,
go.
Yeah.
like the Root property.
Sat there, yeah.
And which is why from what I'm understanding of this, is that's why they're saying that it has to be done within a certain time frame, that they have to plan it if it's just going to sit there vacant.
Yeah, if that's the plan.
Correct.
If there's nothing concrete ready to go, then I'd understand that, but I am thinking about that.
Can you just insert that then?
Yeah.
And I'm
Very
not-
good.
I'm not sure how to word that.
Well,
just-
that's what they pay him the big bucks for.
Okay.
So you
Makes
just want a
sense.
provision essentially if there's nothing in place for them to be,
Some words, like,
Yeah.
if there's a
To start
plan ready to
construction.
go, if.
so within a certain time frame of.
Exactly, yeah. If there's you're going to be you're commencing construction, you've got plans presenting to the village and everything. If there's some sort of a grace period, that, if construction is set to begin within.
I mean, those 2 properties have been sitting there like that for years. Anybody else? Okay, then may I have a motion?
comment.
Oh, sorry,
if there's
public
anyone.
comment. Yes, Marie. Please speak into the microphone. Thank you.
Do my best here. Marie Sapiri, I'm a village resident. I have 2 suggestions. First, in subsection C, I suggest expanding the options for planting beyond the 3 species of sod listed. We can include other species in addition to grass that will serve the purposes of the ordinance and many other purposes that are articulated in the village code and the comprehensive development plan to benefit the community. Allowing property owners to also choose from a select list of beneficial native plants would mean less noisy and polluting maintenance imposed on the neighbors and likely lower costs for property owners. It would require less irrigation and maintenance while creating habitat and for beneficial insects and helping with erosion control and flood mitigation, all of which are valuable for the whole community. I propose 2 examples of native plants that would be suitable and enhance the aesthetics and ecological benefits for neighbors. There are, of course, others. The first is mully grass. It has a high drought tolerance, very regular growth, and the University of Florida designates it as an outstanding plant for this region. The second is the horizontal ecotype of the cocoa plum. This cultivar was once called Hobe Sound cocoa plum because it was found there, which makes it particularly well suited to Tequesta. UF says it makes an excellent ground cover and low hedge. Second, the interaction between subsections C and D is not entirely clear. Subsection C is triggered only by a demolition, but the first sentence of D does not seem to require a recent demolition. However, the second sentence of D specifies that erosion and sediment control measures have to be made within 30 days of clearing, which suggests that it is intended to apply to a construction site scenario. There ought to be clarification about when D applies, because right now we have both A and B apply to any vacant lot. C applies only when there has been a recent demolition, And D appears to apply generally in the case of the first sentence and specifically to recent clearings in the case of the second sentence. Perhaps the solution is to put the second sentence of D into new subsection E and make it clear that it applies specifically to recent clearing activities.
That makes sense.
But it also would pertain to,
Go ahead, speak into the microphone.
oh, there it is. It would also pertain to even existing properties that are vacant, that, you know, things die, you have to replant. It just, you know, it'd be kind of inclusive of everything.
Okay,
So can I ask? Go ahead.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I assume you've picked these sod types and grass covers because that's how other communities have handled. I didn't read
Yeah,
the
but
Boca
go-
or others. I'm concerned about the cocoa plum that was just referenced. I mean, that's a bush.
Yeah,
So
it's a
it would
bush.
certainly,
It can't be 6 inches, has, you know, no more than
yeah,
6
so
inches.
I'm just
tall.
curious if you might comment on how you selected the sod types or the grass or why that decision was made.
So, my understanding, because this is more of a building-related ordinance,
Yeah.
this came from council essentially and
Okay.
tiered down. So, my understanding is throughout the process of drafting the ordinance, I'm not sure how they came up with specifically the, St. Augustine is because everyone has St. Augustine in this
Yeah.
area. I'm not sure about the other ones. I know that they tailored a lot of this ordinance towards the other communities that are such as Boca and Jupiter Inlet. But if you notice, those don't mention specifically the type of grass.
Well, the one did.
Yeah, one did. I just didn't remember
Yeah.
yours. Okay.
And,
Sorry, Madam.
okay, my question is, on C is like, we're giving them 90 days. And then on D, it's 30 days. Can you explain why one is 90? I mean, does it, because of the demolition? I mean, when I read this, I was thinking of the ones down the street on Seabrook where they were all on the news. I mean, here today, gone tomorrow. The trees, everything was gone, and the next thing you knew that they were doing developing. And I'm like, okay, somebody is really, and that's kind of rare to see happening today. But this one, for C, we're saying the existing building or structure is demolished. We're giving them 90 days, and then ground cover sufficient. So if they're not going to build right away, they have to put ground cover in within 30 days then, correct?
Well, these seems almost even more for existing
Yeah.
construction sites, so like you're still required to maintain erosion.
Yeah.
Because it says, for the life of the project.
Well,
inclusive of
because you do,
delays.
I mean, with the construction that's going on US 1, I mean, they do clean up the area and things like that, and they don't, you know,
Yeah, if
leave
they
a
have-
mess. But the one thing I did notice was that the one person on US 1, they covered the storm drains, and somebody had put it on next door, and I said, well, they should contact the municipality. I didn't know what they were talking about, and they said, oh, well, no, they went over it. They individually went to the site manager, and then they fixed the problem right away. So, but, okay. Because I mean, I looked at what you read, you know, from Boca. I mean, Juno Beach was really specific. And considering you only picked one little thing out of Jupiter in the colony, and they got more construction going on.
And from my understanding, that this was all presented to the council in the February workshop. So some of this stuff might have just been from what council has provided to staff from a staff level. However, as mentioned before, if you do feel that maybe 90 days is a longer period that should be included, or 30 days is the day, it's kind of up to your discretion for a recommendation, and then we can go back and revise said ordinance based on your recommendation.
I would recommend 30 days for C. I mean, if that, I would give them 30 days. If they're not gonna start building right away, 30 days, you know, start putting the stuff down. We gotta look at it.
Well, the other does say within 90 days.
Within 90
Yeah,
days.
It's,
That's 3 months.
Yes.
Versus 1 month.
Right,
right.
right.
But they have to put in.
I mean,
They have to put in.
I'm
look at what
thinking of
Jeannie is
where I
gonna
am.
be facing.
Yeah, I mean, the
Yeah.
building is now down, but
Wow.
when is that going to happen that they'll start anything? I mean, it's gonna be a long time. So what do we do with the mess?
Well, the ordinance isn't in effect right now, so it's
No.
not gonna pertain to you, it's for the future.
Well, no, it says it starts
Well,
immediate
starts-
upon adoption.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, but that's what I mean, so,
And
yeah.
just for clarification's sake, so if the board decides that they want to make any recommendations with or without changes, this would then go to council, and council would have 2 hearings of the application, or of the ordinance.
Yeah, so it's a
So-
while,
2 months.
2 months.
I guess my concern is if we make it too short a time period, right? If you put in grass and you don't have irrigation, the grass will all die anyway. So whoever is
takes time.
installing grass would need to have time to install irrigation. So it needs to, they
to
need
be
to have
enough
ample time
time.
for that. So maybe
definitely.
perhaps that's part of the 90 days. I apologize, I'm not as familiar
Yeah,
with the
well,
February
'cause
discussions.
It is within 90 days, so, but you'd have to put in irrigation and make sure there's water and you know, that's gonna
Correct.
Yeah,
take
but if they're
time.
demolishing it, majority of the time, there should be irrigation on the property.
But not right where the house was sitting.
Oh, well,
You know,
no,
if
yeah.
Somebody's gonna go in and put in
Yeah.
zones, it's, you know, it's a big deal, so it's.
Realistically, what my understanding is that council is trying to eliminate properties that are just going to sit there for an extended period of time.
Overgrown.
Become
Yes.
overgrown, not maintained, not mowed, nothing of
Be an
that
eyesore.
sort.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
essentially, this ordinance is to alleviate some of those issues that we have and kind of provide some type of regulation for said properties.
Yeah,
But the
and-
2 properties that we have right now, they're properly maintained.
Well, for example, if you look at the memo, for example, the reserve for a while was sitting kind of vacant for a while and didn't have any maintenance conducted on said property until they started putting up the cabana and things of that nature. So I'm not saying the reserve is the exact reason why this
Yeah,
came up,
right.
but that was one of the lots that
But you have
had
to
that.
be concerned about it because somebody's house could burn down, they remove it, and then there's no plans, so.
Correct.
But I don't have a problem with the 90 days because it's within that 90 days.
Okay.
And
Suppose we get, what I had said before the meeting, looking at Sanibel, my daughter says it's a ghost town. People just actually walked away from all of those properties. She said everything is overgrown. I mean, what do you do that, I mean, we've been very, very fortunate. I mean, so what happens then?
Does anyone know? I was trying to remember
The
what
ordinance.
the penalty is. I assume it's a fine levied on a daily basis.
So typically speaking, if a code is violated of any nature for the most part, you'd have some type of violation assessed by code enforcement.
Yeah.
Code enforcement normally gives a certain amount of time frame. I don't know if it's 30 days, 90 days, I'm not sure about that. But they give some type of notice that they need to start making the changes. And our code enforcement.
Collective action has to take place.
Correct. And if said action is not done, then at some point they may be required to go to the magistrate and assess fines and things like that.
But I assume to Liz's point, in theory, if a hurricane were to strike and that were an issue, council has the authority to temporarily suspend the ordinance if they so
Well,
chose
yeah.
to. Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's like a ghost town, so, I mean, and there's buildings that are totally
that's crazy.
vacated. I mean, so, okay.
For what it's worth, I'm inclined to support it since it's a council directive and let council make any changes that they desire.
I think the only difference I would have to make would just simply be the one where it does allow if there's
Yeah.
the plan to start building immediately.
Yes.
That there'd be an exception.
Some sort of grace period.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, grace period, you're right.
Yeah, for commencement. I
Yeah,
agree.
because
Right.
if you
The
have.
commencement of
If you have
construction.
plans before the building department and you're
Yeah.
going back and forth, you know, it could take a few
Long
months.
time.
And, then you just have to decide at that point, I guess.
Perhaps in that case, there'd be some required screening or something like that. I don't know if we want to go that far, but if you're going to be in active construction, but it's gonna be a dirt lot, perhaps like they're now screening some of the other
Well,
sites.
they will put
Yeah.
screening.
Yeah. I don't know if that's required, though. Is that in code?
Pardon me?
Is the screening required in code, though?
You know what?
I don't know.
I
building
know
codes.
typically they provide it. I can't speak whether or not it's required.
Okay.
That's more of a building question.
Yeah, sorry,
unfortunately.
that one I wasn't familiar. Okay.
I wish I could answer it, but I'm sorry.
All of them have had
Security?
screening on, all of the
Right.
properties. So,
Okay.
Typically, you'll see some sort of like chain link fence or something with like a green mesh or
Yeah.
something to that
An
sort.
airbrushed rendering, yes.
Correct.
okay, are there any other comments from the public? Okay. Now, may I have a motion to approve and for the amended? Go ahead, it's all yours.
Okay, I'll
Go ahead.
make a motion to recommend approval of ordinance number 10-23 with the modification.
I forgot what you said.
Including some sort of a grace period
Grace
for
period,
construction.
for
Including
active-
construction. I second
For
that, yeah.
active building, where they're actively,
On commencement of construction.
Yeah.
Is that it?
well,
That's good.
it's a start.
That's the motion that's amended. May I have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved. Okay. Now I gotta find my agenda. Okay. Are there any staff comments?
None.
Any public comments? Okay, with that, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Liz.
See you next month,
Great job, Chairwoman.
See you next month.
and I'll still be in my
Terrific
boots.
job.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Did you get a ride